Good morning. Welcome to
COVID hospitalizations in Oregon keep rising every day. And in some parts of the state, it's a dire situation.
Things are looking awful. Here we have the most COVID patients we've ever had in the hospital at the moment.
And yes, almost all of them are unvaccinated. And some of you have asked, if people choose not to get the COVID shot, can health insurance companies charge them more or even deny them coverage? We got you an answer. And besides the raging pandemic, we really need to talk about another big issue. How safe, or rather unsafe, people feel downtown.
I'm scared of Portland at this point.
Here's the story.
Okay. Thank you for being with us. What is today, Wednesday? Hump day, the week's flying by. I'm Dan Haggerty. Thanks for being with us. Welcome to The Story. This is the show that relies entirely on your feedback. To tell us what you want to see us cover in this city, what you want to know more about. Email us at thestory@kgw.com. Find me on Facebook or Instagram, or use Twitter and that hashtag, HeyDan. Let's talk big story. So the big story tonight brings us into the ICU for a type of coverage that the local media hasn't been able to give you during this pandemic. Not yet. Let me explain. So we spent a lot of time, as you know, explaining how overwhelmed our hospitals are. We do that in a lot of Zoom interviews, right, on the computer. We show you footage, stock footage. Most of the time it's stuff that the hospital sends over to us. But we haven't actually walked the halls until now. We reached out to several hospitals, the places at capacity. And we asked if we could take a look inside, get a look around. And some of them said yes. So yesterday, Pat Doris went to St. Charles Medical Center in Bend and embedded in the ICU, where they are at full capacity.
So with that, let's bring in Pat Doris and talk to him about his reporting and what he's learned here. Now, first, Pat, I'm just interested. You know, you have been somebody who's covered this from the very beginning. You've done a ton of interviews. You're very knowledgeable on the topic. What did going and seeing this in person change your perspective at all?
Well, it just deepened it. You know, to be able to kind of hang out with the doctors and nurses and see what was going on. I mean, to be able to stand outside an ICU room and watch, you know, the workers, the doctors in there with squeezing the oxygen bag to try and keep a person alive who had severe COVID-19. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I mean, so that was remarkable. And watching these teams of nurses gear up and put on all the clothes and then quickly open the sliding glass door, you know, to another room and then go in to try and take care of somebody. That was, you know, it was pretty profound. And to feel the frustration and the angst of the people that are working there, knowing that this is preventable. And they just are really having struggles with why people are not getting vaccinated.
All right, let's talk about that preventable part of it, because as we know, most people who end up in the ICU are unvaccinated, but there are some vaccinated people who show up there. And we know people go to the ICU after being vaccinated. We know some people die after being vaccinated with breakthrough cases. And I believe that feeds into the whole misinformation that the vaccines aren't effective. But can you talk to us a little bit about these situations where people are in the ICU and have been vaccinated?
Sure, there are special cases. There are people getting sick who have been vaccinated. That's called the breakthrough case. A lot of those, you know, the worst is feels like a bad cold. But there are some people, in fact, when I was at the ICU, out of the 8 patients that were there with COVID, there were 3 who'd been vaccinated. Now, they tell me that 2 of those 3 were also on drugs for chronic illnesses that made them immunocompromised. So their immune system was really suppressed. And even though they got the vaccination, it did not create the antibodies that could recognize and fight the virus. The third person had 1 dose, and I'm not sure what the vaccines were for any of these 2 people, but they had 1 dose, and they also had multiple underlying conditions. So those are the people that are ending up the sickest of the sick, people who are already kind of on the edge, and then the virus comes along and gets them.
Okay, again, this is just kind of a preview of some of your reporting. We'll go much more in depth in the days to come. Can you give us any idea of what you might be getting into?
Well, we'll show you the struggle to save that woman's life in the ICU, a woman in her 50s who was admitted 7 days earlier and suddenly was in real trouble. And we'll also talk to the doctors about the burnout and why they're so frustrated. And, some of the things that they're willing to say now publicly that I'm sure they've been saying for months and months privately, they might shock some folks. You think the doctors are, they never get their feathers ruffled, but these are human beings and they see a serious problem and it's getting worse and worse and worse. The hospitals are full. There's no room at the inn. And part of what's going on, Dan, is they're pushing community members out that need surgeries for cancer, for heart issues, that sort of thing. They're not able to get those surgeries because there's no bed for them to recover overnight. And they say that some of those people are dying in the community because the COVID patients are taking up the bed. So we'll talk about that more as well.
Yeah. Okay. Pat Doris, thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Now, I've gotten a couple of emails recently, like this one we got from Doug. Doug said, "Hey, Dan, are any insurance companies denying coverage to unvaccinated people?" Now, I'm sure we all know when it comes to health insurance, things can get really complicated. We can say, though, insurance companies are not denying coverage to people who are vaccinated. But whether they have to pay a higher premium, well, that's another question. So let's verify that. We are seeing the headlines all over. Unvaccinated workers could end up paying $50 more for health insurance, or the unvaccinated, a $50 monthly paycheck deduction from your employer. So we wanted to know, could unvaccinated people have to pay higher health insurance premiums? Here are the sources we used. Wes Trexler, Deputy Director at the Idaho Department of Insurance, the Affordable Care Act, and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. First off, Trexler says you cannot be penalized based on vaccine status under federal law.
Health insurance carriers, health insurance companies are not allowed to charge more to an individual based on their health status. And that includes their vaccination status. That would be part of their health. The insurance rates can vary by age and by smoker status. But it's prohibited by law for them to charge a person higher rates if for something such as vaccine status.
According to the Affordable Care Act, only 5 things can raise your monthly premium: age, location, tobacco use, individual versus family enrollment, or the category of your plan. But premiums are expected to rise across the board due to the pandemic. And while you won't be penalized for not being vaccinated, employers and insurance companies can offer vaccine incentives. That's due to pandemic-related changes made by the EEOC. In May of 2021, the commission updated its guidance, making it okay for employers to offer incentives to vaccinated workers, so long as the worker voluntarily offers up that medical information. Those incentives can come in different forms, like paid time off, for instance, or small bonuses, or in this case, a discounted health insurance premium. So we can verify, yes, unvaccinated people could end up paying higher premiums, but it's not technically a penalty. Instead, it's due to potential discounts for the vaccinated. Why don't we count some of the vaccinated right now? Let's count some vaccines. More than 2.62 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose. That's about 62% of the state's entire population. Everybody, every kid under 12, everybody over 12, everybody. That's how many people have the shot. In Washington, more than 5 million people have gotten at least their first dose, which works out to be about 66% of their state's entire population, including kids. So you can see there are still a lot of people who aren't vaccinated in both states. Now, let's switch gears for a second. Get it? Switch gears. Hey, we want to talk about crime in Portland now for just a second. And since we have this snazzy and infuriating video of street racers, let's start here because it's just frankly good TV. Now, street racing has become a big problem in our city. It's one of many crimes on the rise. It's also deadly. Portland police say 5 people have been killed in the last year. They've also said point blank that they don't have the resources or the officers to shut down these races and arrest people. So the mayhem continues. Well, not so fast, says Portland City Council. They're here, capes on, no doubt to save the day with maybe more officers. No, instead a new ordinance. Terrifying. Everyone's going to slam on the brakes. Seriously, the city council met today. They voted on a new ordinance that specifically outlaws street racing. Fines go as high as $500. People can get thrown in jail. Their cars can get towed. Now, okay, we get it. New penalties, new law. I understand. But here's the thing. Street racing is already essentially illegal, right? Speeding, reckless driving, they've been illegal for years. And Portland police have said already they don't have enough staff to enforce those laws. In fact, they don't even have a traffic division right now. That said, we should be fair. At today's meeting, Deputy Chief Chris Davis did say that this new ordinance could be helpful in some cases.
We believe that this ordinance gives us a really important tool to deal with not only the people engaged in the dangerous driving activity, but the people who are legitimately facilitating the event. That doesn't mean just everybody who happens to be standing around, but the people who are helping to shut down the roads and organize these events, if you will.
Okay, that sounds good. But again, police aren't even responding to most of these races in the first place. So how much will this new ordinance even get used? We'll have to wait and see. All right, no judgment yet. I suspect we might be waiting a while, but we'll wait and we'll see. But there's another reason we wanted to point out this new ordinance. You see, street racing isn't just illegal, it's also brazen. It's a bunch of people shutting down major streets, oftentimes openly breaking the law, and doing so for hours. And you've got to think, they do this because they know, or at least they seriously doubt, that they're going to face any consequences. And in a lot of cases, they are right. And like we said, we know other crimes are up. Shootings are up. You know that. Homicides are up. Violent crime in general is up. And we see your emails. Portlanders are scared. Today, we emailed Multnomah County DA Mike Schmidt for this story. His office wrote back, quote, "Safety concerns across our community are real." The email went on to say, "We have seen violent crimes and particularly gun violence increase across the country. Other major cities across the country are experiencing the same surge." But like we said, it's not just statistics. It can't be just numbers. There are some intangible elements too. Our team was talking about this. It's kind of like a brazen factor. Random crimes at times, committed stranger on stranger in broad daylight. Now, the city doesn't track things like that in statistics. But we want to be transparent with you. We've been noticing a bit of a shift in the reports that we get, the releases that police send us. So we asked Maggie Vespa to round up just a few of the most, frankly, jarring crimes that we've seen recently, committed out in public in busy downtown Portland. And they all had that brazen factor that we know has left a lot of you nervous.
To zero in on the issue of violence in downtown Portland, we're going to tell you about three examples, three cases that came across our news desk and really grabbed our attention. Case number one stems from a violent assault on a busy sidewalk, an attack on police, and a suspect who hours later was let back on the streets. His name, court documents show, is Jordan Locke. Thursday afternoon, police say Locke stole a soda from a coffee shop near Southwest 3rd and Alder. When the owner confronted him, investigators say Locke punched her in the face and stole her cell phone. 3 police officers later tracked Locke down near Northwest Nadeau and Pine. According to court documents, Locke attacked the arresting officers, beating one with a barrage of punches. Court documents show Locke later said about one officer, "I think I killed him." Investigators eventually tased and arrested Locke, but he wasn't in custody long. According to court documents, Judge Henry Cantor released Locke on his own recognizance despite Locke's history of violent crimes and a record of failing to show up for court dates. Judge Cantor declined to comment. Portland police, in a statement, called it frustrating. On to case 2.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
In this case, the victim is telling his story here on the phone in Multnomah County Court. This hearing happened Tuesday.
He ran up behind me and just hit me in the back of the head with that police baton.
That victim, who KGW is declining to name, told the court he was attacked by 3 men, including the man in the defendant's box, ID'd as Aaron Magar. Magar faces several charges, including assault. His bail is set at roughly $250,000. Court documents show this attack happened Monday around 11 a.m. near Southwest 3rd and Oak. The victim telling the judge he has 9 stitches in his head and he doesn't know the men or why they attacked him.
I'm scared of Portland at this point. I just hope that there is room in the jails to keep criminals that are as violent as this away from people that are just trying to walking downtown Portland at 9 a.m.
Finally, case number 3, an update on an attack that made headlines earlier this summer.
Police say a woman visiting from out of town was stabbed.
Late last month, a tourist was stabbed in the middle of Old Town. Police said, again, the attack was random and the victim was hospitalized, but she survived. The woman they arrested, Tammy Imholt, seemed incoherent, say police. She's been charged with second-degree assault and unlawful use of a weapon. She's being held on roughly $250,000 bail. No trial date has been set. Local business owners theorized it's on the public to try and keep the peace downtown.
We are lacking private security. We're lacking police services. So everybody else is going to have to step up and be involved.
And a late update on this story. Jordan Locke, the man accused in case number 1, failed, according to court documents, to report to pre-trial services after his release. So another judge issued a bench warrant for his arrest. And Wednesday afternoon, Locke was rearrested. He's now being held in Multnomah County Jail on roughly $250,000 bail. I'm Maggie Vespa, KGW News.
It seems like our fire seasons keep getting worse and worse every year. Let's look at what's driving that.
It's lengthening our fire season and giving us a longer window where we're in that kind of critical time period where fuels can combust very rapidly.
When the story continues. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. I always go through some of your questions and comments during the break. I got one I kind of want to address at the end of the show. I don't know quite what I'm going to say yet, but I'm going to keep thinking about it. See, keep sending in your questions. Maybe I'll bump that one and talk about yours. Send them to the story at kgw.com or hit us up on Twitter with the hashtag HeyDan. I also want to remind you about our Hey Help campaign. This week, we're asking you to please consider donating to Mudbone Grown. They're a black-owned farm enterprise that helps people of color get into the farming and agriculture industry. To donate, just click, open up the phone on your camera, point it at that QR code you see on your screen. It'll take you to a link. You can donate there, or go to kgw.com/HeyHelp. This is a micro donation drive. You don't have to give a lot of money. Give no matter what amount it is, no matter how small, it all adds up. So it's late summer, which means we're right in the thick of wildfire season. So all this week we are partnering with our sister stations on the West Coast for a series called Scorched Earth. Now, if you've lived around here for a while, it's probably kind of seems like fire season gets worse and worse every year. And if it feels that way, it's because, well, they are. But what exactly is causing that? And how do we deal with these extreme fires? Meteorologist Monica Woods from our Sacramento station looked into that.
People, dried out land, and climate. A dangerous combination for wildfire in the West.
Wait, hold up, stop, go.
Interestingly, people are responsible for all three.
Tim Brown is the director of the Western Regional Climate Center and professor at the Desert Research Institute in Reno, Nevada. He's working to understand our rapidly changing wildfire environment.
In many places around the West, we've had a long history of what we call fire exclusion. In other words, it's been an aggressive fire suppression policy to go in and extinguish fire.
But this leaves behind a lot of available fuel for more fires, especially in areas that have seen some of the biggest growth in home building. More people, more fire risk.
Sheriff's Office!
One example of this is the 2017 Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa, California, just outside wine country, striking in the middle of the night, becoming a race against time to save lives.
Where you at? Help, right here! Come on! Screw your shoe! Come on, she's disabled. All right, let me get her feet. Oh, don't hit me.
It wiped out entire neighborhoods, becoming the second most destructive and fourth deadliest fire in California history.
If you look at the fire perimeter, you can go back to 1964 to was called the Hanley Fire, nearly identical fire perimeter. Much less damage, much less costly.
And now, in a warmer, drier world with growing drought concerns, these fires are showing explosive behavior. Neil LaRoe is researching high-impact weather in the western United States, focusing on how fires are creating their own weather extremes like tornadoes.
Fire-generated tornadoes are similar to ordinary tornadoes in the atmosphere, but they're kind of on steroids.
Driven by intense heating from fire, creating updrafts as high as 130 miles per hour.
And we're also seeing that the most intense form of these are linked to fire-generated thunderstorms. A fancy name is pyrocumulonimbus.
The warming climate and drought, all a backdrop to this extreme behavior.
It's lengthening our fire season and giving us a longer window where we're in that kind of critical time period where fuels can combust very rapidly, release a ton of heat into the atmosphere, and drive some of the extremes that we're seeing.
Hotter, more intense fires creating their own weather and making rapid runs toward communities. All of this makes reaction time even more critical. One tool that is greatly helping is the Alert Wildfire Camera Network.
The crazy idea there was we'd take our seismic network and we would put cameras up on our communication towers, and we would try to help the Forest Service and others understand the situational awareness, discover fires potentially. And our crazy idea now has blossomed to almost 1,000 cameras on 2 continents.
Graham Kent is one of its developers and director of the Nevada Seismological Lab. He says this not only saves time, but helps to deploy proper resources.
And then they can basically scale up or down the resource really right away. So they don't have to wait for the first fire truck to get on scene to say, oh my God, you need to send 3 tankers, a couple helicopters, and 10 trucks, right? They can see that almost from the get-go.
When asked what kind of difference the cameras make, he goes back to building out the network after the Tubbs fire.
Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, mandatory evacuation order, leave your homes.
There weren't any cameras, and it was a very confusing environment. And the next thing you know, this wave of flames are coming.
Just 2 years later, a fire nearby was confirmed in the first 10 minutes, and evacuation started immediately based on what the fire looked like on the cameras. Even with all this technology, people living in these fire-prone areas know more needs to be done, from warning, firefighting tactics, and mitigation to prevent more destruction and deaths.
All right. Stick with us. Keep asking those questions and comments. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. I'm going to read a few when we finish the story next. Welcome back. Before we get to tonight's comments, I do want to show you something. We on the story like to honor quality investigative work. As you know, we feature it on our show as much as we can. And last week, we did a little investigation into the so-called Witch's Castle in Forest Park, and reports that we've gotten about teens holding tiki torch parties up there. Well, today, or a couple days ago actually, I got this email from Steve with this photo attached. Steve wrote, "Hey Dan, I took my 2 in-house investigative journalists on a walk to the Witch's Castle, but found no evidence of any tiki torches. We did see some wax droplets on a second-floor ledge, which could have been from candles sometime in the past. Well done, well done. I was wearing a T-shirt," they said, "from the 90s, but since we went in the daytime, there were no fashionable teenagers to question my belonging there. Thanks for giving us the idea for a nice shaded nature walk on a hot day." Well done to Steve and the investigators. If you're out there investigating something, please let us know. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. I got to read this comment tonight. I got it from Slim Shady was the name. "Hey, dude. I'm a lifelong street racer." Okay. "Most of us are responsible AF." Okay, again. Now he's remarking on the video we were showing and calling street racing. "What these gangsters and losers are doing is not at all street racing. Holy crap, you're usually so much better." I'll still take the compliment. "This is literally just low-skilled donuts, not even drifting." I could show you what drifting is, but even the biggest goober like you, Dan, can tell this ain't even drifting. This is nothing but hooligans and stock cars doing nothing but donuts. Who cares? What are you talking about? I've got a bunch of emails like this. People who are like purists on street racing. That's not what we're talking about. I don't care if you're doing really good street racing or low-budget donuts in a parking lot. The community doesn't want that happening outside, blocking roads. It's illegal. We don't have the police to stop you from doing it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the other content, but I'm not going to be like, well, street racing is illegal unless it's super duper good. by people who are lifelong, dude. That's it for tonight. I'm sorry. I appreciate you being with us. We got a Thursday tomorrow. See you then.